Underwriting for the Money Doctor Show is provided by Regari Real Estate, Federal Street, Greenfield, a third-generation real estate agency serving the Pioneer Valley. Ryan and Casey Liquors, Main Street, Greenfield, exploring the world one glass at a time. West County Equipment Rental of Shelburne, daily, weekly, monthly rentals, 625-6463, or on the web at westcountyequipment.com. The Franklin County Community Development Corporation, growing sustainable businesses and communities since 1979. www.fccdc.org. Weld Communications, Marketing and Publicity, helping businesses spread the word in the Pioneer Valley and beyond. www.weldwords.com.
There's a better life if I could be debt-free, but oh, my money is a mystery. I was feeling overwhelmed and it was wearing thin when I knocked on the door and heard the doctor's in. Oh, the doctor's in, the doctor's in. She got the right prescription to help you win. Oh, the doctor's in, the money doctor's in.
Hello and welcome to the Money Doctor Show. My name is Chris Collins. I am not the host of this program. I'm in fact the executive producer of this program, though you'll see me from time to time appearing on segments periodically throughout the show. The show is hosted, though, by Francis Rahaim, and this show is intended to introduce the public to who Francis Rahaim is and what this show is all about. So without further ado, my guest/host/partner in this endeavor, Fran Rahaim of Power Down Debt Incorporated, which is based in Montague, Massachusetts. You are, rather than having me explain what you are, explain to people who you are and what you do.
Wow, that's a big question, Chris.
And we only have a 15-minute segment.
It's only a 15-minute segment. Well, let's see. I'm a person who ended up in a business by serendipity about getting people out of debt, because necessity is the mother of invention, and I had some debt. I was managing it all well, able to make all the payments, send extra, all of that, but sort of looked at the picture and decided there must be a better way to do it, and tripped across what was a partial solution, made it better, and ended up with a company. So today I help people get out of debt without harming their credit. We handle all debt, including mortgages, car payments, student loans, all the stuff the other debt companies don't handle, and credit cards. And we do it on the same payments monthly and without harming credit at all.
Now, before we go any further, I will admit publicly that I am a client, okay? That's one of the reasons why I wanted to do this with you, because we've been in a client relationship for, a couple of years now, mm-hmm. And Fran also, by the way, does radio segments on the radio stations WHAI, Bear Country, The River. So you hear her periodically if you listen to the local radio. And that's where I met Fran. And I recall that every time we would go in and we would do a session talking about debt, we do short interviews, I always came away feeling inspired. And I've always had sort of debt issues myself. But I can tell you that one of the things I noticed about being around you in this environment is you're very positive. You make people feel like we can actually get out from under this thing if we just follow a plan. It's all about planning, right? Yeah,
it's really quite simple, believe it or not. And I suppose the reason, thank you for saying that, and we met at WHMP, I think.
That's right.
And I suppose the reason that I hear that often is because I am positive about it. I really feel great about this. When I had been in finance since I was 23 years old, so I've got 25 years. Folks out there can do the math on that, I'm sure. I've got 25 years of doing some sort of financial services work for people. When I discovered this, my first gut instinct was that of anger. I was really upset that nobody taught me this. My doctorate's in finance, all these years behind me in finance, no one ever said, hey, guess what? You know what? You could live a much easier life if you just paid off all your debt fast. Instead, they told you take on a 15-year mortgage instead of a 30, or bring your interest rates down on your credit cards, or file a bankruptcy, or whatever the case was. And everybody that I knew, or every place that I had learned information from, all compartmentalized debt. They all looked at specific debts. This credit card at 28% is evil, we hate it, but this home equity line at 3.25% is okay, we can tolerate that. Even though the home equity line might be $50,000 and the credit card might be $5,000, it was driven that way. So you know, I suppose I feel really positive about it because I know that it works. I've lived this for 5 years. I took 37 years worth of debt. I chopped it down to 10.7 years without adding any money. I live it, it's on autopilot, and I'm down to 5.2 years with nothing left but mortgages. So I know it works, and when I see clients like you bet. I mean, people come in stressed and they don't feel good about themselves, they feel shame, they feel embarrassment, they feel like failures, and inside of an hour and a half in my office, the table turns a little bit and they begin to think differently about debt and their relationship with money.
A lot of the people who are going to be on this show are going to be people who are going to tell those stories. And this show, and if you want to learn more about Fran's program, by all means contact her. She's in the book. The number is 773-5555.
774.
774.
773 is Franklin County Medical Center
Home Care. Yeah, I know.
We get each other's phone calls.
774-5555. You can find out more about Power Down Debt. This show, though, is not going to be about Power Down Debt so much as it is about telling stories about individuals who have dealt with debt in a positive way and come out the other side. And you actually have that story. I mean, you lived it, and it wasn't just, I mean, you were in corporate finance for a while, but before that, you had a huge problem yourself that you had to deal with and came out of it on the other end. You want to tell that story?
I can always count on you for digging up the dirt on people, Chris.
That's what I do.
It's true. Two things. First of all, when you and I talked about the idea of this show, the one thing that we both kept saying is this is not some sort of infomercial. We're not going to beat people over the head about debt. We're not going to give them solutions. This is a show where people can relate to other people who have been in debt and gotten out, any sort of money topic, small business coaching, whatever it happens to be that we deal with. So the story that I have, and when I said necessity is the mother of invention, I'm sure what you're getting at is a bankruptcy that I filed.
Yeah, I'm curious about that because it's not often that somebody's willing, who's in finance or deals with financial issues, is willing to admit. But, you know, I think it gives you more credibility because you've been there. You know what it's like.
Well, let's not be silly about it. First of all, it's public knowledge if somebody wanted to dig it up.
That's true, too.
And secondly, even though I resist telling people, it's because it's the worst feeling I have emotionally about choices I've made in my life when it comes to money is, boy, oh boy, I filed a bankruptcy. Now, I was 23, I was divorced, I inherited about $95,000 in unsecured debt. Because I was playing the credit game. I thought I was doing things well. I was buying and selling houses. I would get a credit card. I would build up the credit line. I had all this credit limit available. And in a bad divorce, for lack of a long story, let's keep it short, it fell onto my shoulders when something happened. So I had to find a way to get rid of it. Now, I was raised by parents who were hard workers, you know, struggled their whole life, American dream. The last thing you do is file a bankruptcy. But I fought it and fought it and fought it, and one day I called a counseling agency and I went and spoke with them, and they told me you have no choice but to file a bankruptcy. And I remember to this day, Chris, I sat in the office and sobbed, absolutely sobbed, and fought it for another 6 months. I said, no, I can make more money. All I have to do is make more money, which is what we always think is the key. Just make more money.
Earn your way out of it.
There's never enough money to do this. Finally, I ended up filing a Chapter 13 bankruptcy, which is reorganization.
It's reorganization.
Debt, right.
It's not a wipeout of the debt.
I did file a Chapter 7 to wipe out the debt that I had not really owed, that we agreed I didn't owe. But I filed a Chapter 13 to reorganize all the other debt. And they gave me a 5-year timeline to pay it off in. And it was paid off 34 months early, which is, again, you know, what I'm made of is that don't say quit, you know, never quit.
Didn't you have a bet with the judge too?
I didn't have a bet, but you remember that story?
I do remember. I think it's a fascinating story.
Yeah, I had to go to Worcester. Where I was living was in the district that I had to go to Worcester, and I remember sitting very uncomfortably in the room with people, you know, thinking, oh, my time has come where I've got to go in front of the judge and explain this. And I remember I was so frightened of what would happen to me, and I was young. And I asked one question. I said, is there any penalty if I pay this off early? And he said, if you pay this off early, I will come to your house and have a glass of champagne with you. He said, I've never seen anybody pay off a Chapter 13 early. And knowing what I know now, there probably was no reason for me to pay it off early. It probably wasn't the wisest financial decision in terms of the interest that I paid, but I felt good about it. And feeling good about money is what I want to do for people. That's what my experience has been, and that's what I want to impart.
You're watching The Money Doctor Show. I'm Chris Collins. I'm hosting this only for one day. And my guest is actually the host of this show, Francis Rahaim. We're going to be on every week here on GCTV and on public access stations throughout the Valley, so you can get a taste of who Francis is and some of the stories we're going to be telling about how people have dealt with debt and finance. We're also going to have some people on to tell you things you may not know about local businesses. We're also going to have some people from the CDC on. There's a lot of resources that are out there that I think people forget are out there. We want to make sure we bring that stuff to you as often as possible.
Yes, it's really important. Even though I run a debt company, I had all those years in financial services. What I like to do is look at somebody's entire portfolio, everything they've got. And the reason I started this debt company is I think people ignore, corporate America completely ignores managing your debt properly. Not getting rid of it, managing it properly as part of your financial picture.
Do you think that part of the reason for that, and this is me saying this, not you, but I as a professional, do you think that sometimes corporate America tries to keep people sort of in debt, spinning their wheels because they know that they're going to try and consume more? I mean, I remember when I got rid of some debt a few years ago, some credit cards, and immediately I started getting applications in the mail for new credit cards, and I ran my head right back into the noose. I think there's a little bit of a conspiracy going on.
Well, let's think about that. Conspiracy theory or otherwise, put the shoe on the other foot. You're out there, you've loaned money to somebody, and you're making 22% on it. What are you going to do about it, right? Corporate America is not going to tell you this. They thrive on the interest that we pay them. They're not going to tell you how to pay off your loans early. When they even get pushed to the max, like the credit card companies did recently, where they have to tell you how long it will take you to pay off your credit cards, if you proof that out, you'll find that's not quite accurate either.
It's not.
It's based on that payment on that statement, even though they're going to bill you on a declining statement. Not to get off on a rant, but there's always these sorts of things, and you bet corporate America turns on our interest rates. The only way you're going to win this game is to fight your own battle and do it in a way that beats the clock.
Yeah, and there's ways to do that, and you obviously have a formula that works. Let's go back a little bit to the beginning for you. You had the bankruptcy, you had the issue. You were working for a corporation for a while. Were you selling insurance for a while? Yep,
I worked my way out of the bankruptcy in part by working for John Hancock. I worked for John Hancock for 5 years. Never thought I'd be in the insurance business.
Yeah, I just can't see you selling insurance. How did you wind up in that? Was it out of necessity, or was it a fleeting interest, or just a desire to make money? What?
It was a perfect storm. I was running a consulting business. I lost my big client. The next client I was going to work for, I wasn't very happy about. I had remembered taking a LIMRA exam, and all the big insurance companies were after me, and I interviewed with them. And I was unimpressed by most of them, but the one office that I interviewed with in East Long Meadow was run by a man named Daniel Geary, who was a retired school principal, if I remember correctly. And I just really liked him right from the start. He was all about education. He was not about sales. He was just what you think an insurance person is not. And I gravitated to him, and I chose to work for John Hancock, and he made sure that I got education. He made sure that I knew what I was doing before I just went out and ripped people off. And he ran his whole agency that way, and I was really happy to be associated with him. And I worked for them for 5 years. I actually thought I would be a lifer. And then I was in a bad car accident, and I was out of work for a year and 2 months, and then they closed the office I worked in, and I chose to go out on my own as an independent broker and became a registered investment advisor.
Well, let me just tell you, the part about being out for a year, I can certainly identify with that. I know what that's like. And you know, that was a tough comeback for you too, but this is the kind of fighter you are. You were able to claw your way back from that.
Well, that's another financial dilemma for people, as you well know. I mean,
oh boy, do I ever know.
You know, I was on the job, but the man who hit me was not insured. Workers' comp didn't pay me anywhere near what my income was. I had to dig myself out of a hole again, or you know, whatever the case is. So you have to keep clawing your way back financially, and it wasn't until about five and a half years ago that I discovered how to manage the debt so well that the sky opened up, and I thought, wow, it's the last time I have to do this. No matter what happens in my life, it's manageable. There's a way to do this, and you're experiencing that now.
We're going to take a break. We're going to come back, and when we come back, I want to talk more about your personal narrative, but also about financial literacy and why it is that they don't teach us this stuff in school. And we'll also talk about bankruptcies and some other things that, you know, some fallacies about money management that people don't understand. So we're watching The Money Doctor Show. I'm Chris Collins, your host for this episode. My guest is the future host of this show, Francis Rand. We're going to come back and tell you all about Fran and more about how you can make yourself a little bit more financially solvent right after this.
Underwriting for The Money Doctor Show is provided by Regari Real Estate, Federal Street, Greenfield, a third-generation real estate agency serving the Pioneer Valley. Ryan and Casey Liquors, Main Street, Greenfield, exploring the world one glass at a time. West County Equipment Rental of Shelburne, daily, weekly, monthly rentals. 625-6463 or on the web at westcountyequipment.com. The Franklin County Community Development Corporation, growing sustainable businesses and communities since 1979. www.fccdc.org. Weld Communications, Marketing and Publicity, helping businesses spread the word in the Pioneer Valley and beyond. www.weldwords.com.
Welcome back to the Money Doctor Show. I'm Chris Collins. I'm hosting this edition of this show, but my guest is the future host of the Money Doctor Show, the Money Doctor herself, Frances Rahaim of Power Down Debt Incorporated, which is located in Montague, Massachusetts. You can also hear Fran. She's on the radio every week on WHAI, Bear Country. I think you're on HMP and on the river, so the big four right here in Franklin
Yeah, the river
County.
doesn't have talk, but our ads are on.
Your ads are on
and
there,
on
exactly.
all the Saga stations.
So you can learn more about Fran, learn more about her various topics related to money, because she's a money expert. This show, The Money Doctor, is about telling stories about money, and we were talking in the first segment about some of your personal narrative and how you got into this. And the whole idea of the psychology of debt fascinates me, and I'm as guilty as anybody of this. I mean, I've gone into your office on numerous occasions as a client, just with my head in my hands, saying, well, "What am I going to do?" And
literally
I know,
with your head in your
literally
hands.
with my head in my hands.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had some moments, and I always come out feeling better. And one of the reasons I come out feeling better is because of the realization that you taught me that when you look at your debt as a whole picture rather than little individual pieces, the numbers are not quite as onerous as they may seem once you get it in a situation where you're organized and you're managing it, and the debt sort of begins to take care of itself. Talk about that a little bit.
Right. Well, first of all, boy, you hit a number of topics there. The first thing is, whenever somebody says a financial expert, I always cringe, because I consider myself to be a financial student.
Really?
And that's absolutely the truth. Do I know more than many people? Yes. Do I know it all? No. But we figured out some pretty important things, and the idea behind that is to be able to explain it to people in a way that they understand. I don't really want to, dance in financial jargon and make people feel uncomfortable and impress them. I want them to really understand what's going on. And for you, talking about psychology of debt, that's part of really understanding what's going on. When you come to me, you're feeling emotionally distraught. You're feeling stressed. You're feeling like there's, you can't find your way out. You're up at night trying all these different patterns, trying to get to solve things.
Oh, yeah.
And you come in and see me, and I say, Chris, it's okay. I got this. I got your back. And I show you a very simple method very simple technique that shows you why what you're in for debt isn't as scary as it seems. So let's take a scenario there. Let's say that you've got 6 debts. These aren't your debts personally, but let's say that you have 6 debts. You've got a mortgage at 5%, you've got a couple of credit cards at 28%, you maybe have a student loan at 6%, and a car loan at 10%. Well, that all sounds pretty scary. A lot of those interest rates are ominous. But when you manage that debt properly, and you look at the picture as an overall, I look at your debt comprehensively, and I create a program that manages, and the key word here is manages. It's not settle, it's not consolidate, it's not restructure, it's not move it around. It's manage what you've got now. When you manage what you've got now, even on the existing payments, but you manage it properly, you can drop that effective interest rate, that's what I call it, effective interest rate, down to about 2 or 3% in most of my clients' cases. And that is because we're using several formulas to weight the debt a certain way, and then we're using a snowball method to snowball it down so that the debt is paid off far ahead of schedule. So let me give you an example. How do you take debt that's at 28% with 5 or 6 debts and get it down to 2? Let's suppose you owed somebody $1,200 for 12% at 12% for 12 months. I'm using 12s because I can break them into months. Every month in a traditional loan, you'd repay 1/12 of the principal, or $100, and 1/12 of the interest, or 1%. Right? If you paid it back for 12 months, you'd pay back $1,200 in principal and 12% interest. If you took that same debt and managed it properly, threw it into Power Down Debt World, I love to have a little world of my own, you would still repay $1,200 in principal. But let's suppose I had a way to pay it off in the 4th month. That means you only paid 4 interest payments at 1% apiece, which means you only paid 4% on that money, no matter how you sliced it. Now, what keeps your credit clean is that the creditor got 12% while you owed them. Now, all of that is fancy numbers and math and all of that, but that is the root of why this works. And that's what is behind changing your emotions from, oh my gosh, I'm mired in this debt, I'm never going to get out, I hate this high interest rate loan, and I can't wait to move it onto my house in a home equity line or whatever the case is.
I did that.
And we've all done that. And then I told you I'm a student of debt, right?
Yes.
I have 2 home equity loans from doing exactly that back before I knew this. And you shift from thinking about your debt that way and trying to make a plan that compartmentalizes that debt into feeling as though, oh, I've got a whole plan about this. And this is just going to happen on autopilot, and I'm going to feel okay about this. And it doesn't matter if a future debt comes up, because all I have to do is call up and add it in, and it's going to get managed properly. And as long as I can make the payment, overall, I might be paying 2 or 3% interest back. You feel a lot better about those 25% credit cards or a 13% auto loan when you realize that effectively you're only paying 2 or 3% back.
Yeah, it's a huge difference, and it's, you mentioned the word empowerment, and the thing you're going to hear from the stories the people are going to be in these chairs is just that wow, it's different. The difference between playing a reactive game and being able to be proactive and saying, okay, yeah, I've got this debt, but I'm going after it and fixing it. And that brings up another question. You hear all these different ads on the TV. Just give us a call. We'll wipe out your debt, or
right.
we'll
pennies on the dollar.
Exactly.
Right.
I mean, are these just all scams? Are any of them legitimate, or is this just a way for someone to make more money off of the backs of people that are in trouble?
Well, here's my disclaimer. I'm not an attorney. I'm not an accountant. So are they legitimate? I really can't say whether they're legitimate or not. I can tell you that personally, when I found myself in debt and knew I was there but thought I would find a better way out, I did a lot of research on programs like that. And I found settlement companies to be less than forthright with information, the ones that I called. And mostly they want you to pay them to negotiate a partial settlement on your debt. It turns out that you not only could do that for yourself for free, but that by the time you're done doing this, you usually owe as much in fees and penalties at the end as you would have to begin with, and now your credit's trashed. So I can't wait for somebody in government to figure out that this is not a useful thing for people and shut them down. Consolidation companies, they consolidate all your debt into one nice, easy payment. They're certainly legitimate. You can go get a loan and consolidate all your debt and get one nice little payment. The problem is human nature. The problem is psychologically, you're going to live on that little payment for a while, or you're maybe even going to say, I'll send extra, and then life will happen to you because you've stretched that. Once you consolidate, you've stretched what might have been a 5 or 6 year debt along with some 10 or 20 year debts into like 30 years.
Exactly.
Now you've consolidated over 30 years. That's a long time for life to happen to you. And what happens with most people is you just layer on more debt.
And you've got no wiggle room at that point.
You've got no wiggle room.
Yeah.
And especially the thing I hate most to see is that people take unsecured debt like credit cards and put it on their house in a home equity line. Because if they had run into terrible financial trouble before they consolidated or before they restructured that debt, they could file a bankruptcy on the credit cards. Filing a bankruptcy and getting it off your mortgage is almost not going to happen. So now you've put your house at risk for a debt that you might have managed a different way. My opinion is bankruptcy is a last-ditch effort, a last resort for sure. But there are times when it's the right way to move your debt and the wrong way to move your debt.
And I think people underestimate how important it is to maintain a good credit rating, if in any way possible. I mean, yeah. and I've, despite my mistakes that I've made, and I've made a few financial mistakes, I've always jealously protected that credit rating because you never know when you're going to need it. And I know people that have had stumbles, and I keep telling them, you got to get this cleared off because you got to get that credit rating where you could, because you never know when you're going to have to buy a car or buy, like you said, life happens to you sometimes.
Well, this is where I get to be the money doctor again and say, thank you for playing. Yes, credit rating is important. What worries me is when people come in and they're playing the credit card game. They're making payments on a credit card with another credit card. They're doing whatever they can do trying to protect their credit rating, and they come to me and they're worried about what happens if they can't make their payments, let's say. Let's say they've got a 52% debt to income ratio. They can't make their payments, and they're saying to me, we don't want to not pay somebody, or we don't want to be delinquent on anybody because we're worried about having good credit. And I have to say to those people at that time, you know what? The last thing you need right now is good credit. You're in so deep, you can't make the payments you've got. Do I care about your good credit? You bet. If they can make the payments they've got, even negotiated minimum payments, fine. But if they really, really can't make those payments, then somebody's got to the credit's got to get dinged up a little bit to put them into an affordable range where it gets manageable, everybody can breathe, and now you have payment arrangements where you can make every payment on time, and now your credit restores again in a relatively short period of time.
Yeah, you can rebuild it, but you have to have a plan. It comes down to that.
You know what doesn't rebuild it, though, is remaining delinquent. On 1 month you're delinquent on this card, the next month you're delinquent on that card. You never get past those 30-day lates.
And the sad part is nobody ever tells you that. I mean, there's no, and I've never understood this. You know, when I was in college, there was every course, you know, designed to try and help you develop skills to get a job. There was even a guidance department or a career counselor to help you find a job once you got out of college. Not one single course on how to manage money in the real world.
Yeah, or your student loans when you get out. Right?
Exactly. Yeah. And the student loans are a huge, I mean, I have nephews that have student loans, and you know, they're really struggling. I mean, people don't understand, I think, in the educational world, how important it is to have these real life kinds of experiences and knowledge when it comes to just regular money. And you see it on college campuses when they're sitting out there with credit card applications for students that don't have any money to pay it back. It's predatory lending.
And even some of the better education, the better schools will do an exit counseling thing. But that's based on, you know, we think you're going to make $30,000 a year and here's how you'll pay your bills or whatever. But I am a big believer in, if we went into college and talked about student loans, if somebody sat us down and said, okay, so you want to be a social worker. Yes. Well, you're doing that for all the right reasons. Wonderful, bravo. You're going to get out of school with $100,000 worth of loans. What $100,000 worth of loans looks like to you is $600 a month in payments. Let's go over your income that we expect you to have, living expenses and payments. Are you going to be able to do that? And $600 is just, I'm just throwing numbers out there. But if somebody were very specific about those things, I think some students would think differently about where they went to school, what they went to school for, how they managed their loans.
Yeah, and no one tells you that stuff until the very end. And then you wind up in the money doctor's office talking, and there are worse places to be, folks. We're going to be here every week talking about these stories, talking to individuals who have had the same experiences. We'll talk about medical debt. We'll talk about, you know, how to deal with financing your dreams. I mean, that's the other thing, is I'm looking forward to having a lot of these guests on that have dreams that they want to finance, and how you help them do it.
Yeah, it's my favorite thing to do.
It is.
To get people to their goals. Favorite thing to do. The debt's just in the way. You just have to manage it and keep yourself on track, and then the world opens up for other things.
Do you envision a time when you ever won't want to do this?
No, I don't. Maybe someday I won't want to do this anymore. But as long as my health holds out, I would do this. It's just so rewarding. I mean, clients leave my office hugging me. You've seen it.
I have.
They leave my office hugging me or smiling and
they're going to leave this studio probably hugging you too at various times as well.
I hope so. But no, I didn't intend to be here. It's complete, as I said, serendipity, but I fell into it, and it changed my life, and I do it because it changes other people's lives.
What's your vision for this show? I mean, what do you want people to take away from the Money Doctor Show?
Wow, I wish I knew. A couple of things. One, I'm really 5 feet tall and brunette and 48 years old. I'm not 6 feet with gray hair, but I get that a lot. Just the idea that there is optimism. Optimism is what I'm looking. There is a way for you to get out of this. I don't care how bad the debt is. I'm living proof. I don't care how bad it is. I've been there. There is always a plan. It might be a 2-part plan. It might be file bankruptcy on this stuff, manage that stuff. It might be, restructure something, manage this. But there is always a possibility for a plan, no matter what.
I invite you weekly to come into the Money Doctor's lair here and listen to her talk about these stories and hear the people from their own mouths tell you exactly how they were able to deal with their money issues. This show is going to be about people, not just numbers. It's not going to be about trying to sell you anything other than the good feeling and the great aura surrounding this woman, who I am so happy to be involved with on a professional level on this show. And next week I'll be in the booth, Fran will be in the host chair, and each week she will be, and I'll be making pop-up appearances here and there once in a while, but it's Fran's show, and I'm looking very much forward to this little journey we're going to be on.
Thank you, Chris.
That is The Money Doctor. I'm Chris Collins. She's Frances Rahaim. She's the host. She'll be here next week in the host chair. And thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you next week.
There's a better life if I could be debt-free. But all my money is a mystery. I was feeling overwhelmed and it was wearing thin when I knocked on the door and heard the doctor's in. Oh, the doctor's in, the doctor's in. She got the right prescription to help you win. Oh, the doctor's in, the money doctor's in.